Aren't you tired of talking about patches and comps all the time? All these intros that are just getting fancier and fancier are putting too much pressure on our poor editor. So we're going to give him a break this time and focus on a more evergreen guide that can last beyond a single patch and teach you skills that can last for the whole 3.5 set. Hey everyone, and welcome to another ProGuides TFT video. Today we're going to be talking about early and mid-game strategies and specific boards that can bring you closer to clinching that first. Managing to have a good early game is important, and the HP lead alone can move you into a top 4 finish, even if you don't exactly make the best comp you could. In fact, a whole server, the Korean one, plays with this mindset of aggressive playing towards a top 4 finish and basically rarely losing and dropping LP. In this video, we will talk about early game potential openers, their strengths and positioning, items they use and which units they're best on, mid-game transitions that you can go towards with the boards we discuss. As for more specific mid-game boards, they're included in our other videos of top 3 comps, for example, and we will also make a more targeted video on them on Sunday, covering possible ways of transitioning a mid-game board to a late-game comp. Before we dive in, I just want to let you guys know that we have a Discord community and a new subreddit that are growing really fast. We have you all to thank for that, and we want to continue building our community and helping you be a part of it. So make sure you click the link in the description below. I'll see you guys over there. Early game. Let's start by talking about some really strong openers. 2 Vanguards plus any unit. This assumes you did not have gold or decided for some strange reason to not level to 4 at 2-1. Usually this happens because you managed to 2-star more than one unit, or you just did not hit. The early Vanguards are excellent in delaying your opponent while the unit you chose to DPS is able to dish out some damage. An example of this opener is this. You can use various champions instead of the TF in this opener, like Ahri, Caitlyn, or Ziggs, as well as other Vanguards you find like Mordekaiser or Nautilus. If you get some defensive items, depending on the comp you're going for, Ionic Spark is always a good combination and helps your early Vanguards be both defensive and aggressive. Make sure you earn gold so that you can level to 4 quickly though. No matter how strong, this opener will definitely fall off in the next turn, and it would be sad to lose the start of a win streak if you win the first round. Let's look at another early game board that's a bit riskier. 2 Vanguards plus Space Pirates. This board assumes you found an early Darius or Jace. The reason it's riskier is because Darius is struggling at the moment since there are so many tanky frontliners in the early game and he cannot burst through them and pop off like the dunk master he is. Jace is always better, and Graves 2-star is an excellent disrupting frontliner in the early game. Without a Jace, you can still run Darius. They use the same items quite well like Ionic Spark. The extra Vanguard can be Leona, Poppy, Nautilus, or Mordekaiser. If you only find a Darius, you should try to level to 4 in order to fit the Vanguards in as well. Try to position the Darius one step behind so that he takes some time to get to the fight and is not targeted. Be careful of him wrapping around and ending up getting the aggro though. For items, Ionic Spark is once again excellent, as is Bramble, GA, and the rest. Jace is an amazing item carrier for Sorcerer Riven or the mech, so consider those builds if you get him early. Graves is not a great item carrier, but he uses Morello or Ludens fairly well. Overall, I would not recommend itemizing him. If you manage to get this opener, always aim to aggressively level afterwards. You will be able to using the Pirate Gold, so make sure you get to level 5 quickly. The next opener is a great one, encompassing many possible item paths with units that make good of a vast array of those items. 2 Vanguards plus 2 CHRONO. When you open with this, you have your Vanguard who can hold an item, your TF for sorcerer items, your Caitlyn or that early Vayne you got can take those 80 items off your bench. The CHRONO synergy gives you much needed attack speed, which means more mana generation for the big mana pools of TF and Caitlyn. Since fights last longer in the early game due to lack of damage, the extra 15% tick at 8 seconds can be fight winning. With this opener, positioning is key, trying to keep your TF safe since he's usually the source of your damage if no Vayne is in sight. Items for this comp are pretty much whatever you got. ZZ Rot Portal is an interesting one to give you more time and frontline, while Last Whisper or Giant Slayer are great on Vayne or Caitlyn. TF is a Sork item carry if you got a Morello or a blue buff or even a Shojin. Make sure you keep an extra TF though, since he's part of late game builds and you don't want to spend gold looking for him on level 8. Try to find synergies that fit your units and your best items. For example, if you have TF as your main carry, the board would switch to this version. Make sure you try these openers out, especially in the Trade Sector Galaxy, where 2-starring those units can be easier. Moving on, let's focus on the other amazing synergy that you can use for a great opener, Brawlers. 2 Brawlers plus any unit. Brawlers are a bit weaker now, but Illaoi got a buff, so it balances out. Vanguards are usually the better option, but we can't have everything. If you get Brawlers in the early game, make sure to put them in the field, as frontline often outvalues backline, as long as you have at least one DPSing unit. The better frontline usually wins in early game fights, with items making the snowball even harder. Let's take a look at the comp. Notice anything familiar? Yep, TF is tucked between two big bodies again, shooting his cards at people. This opener is fairly strong provided your TF stays safe, and the backline positioning will help ward off infiltrators. Since we have Illaoi, we will probably want to go into BattleCast, making Ionic Spark a really good item on her to force the proc as many times as possible. An early Bramble Vest is great on her as well, so this opener is amazing for a later mech game. Brawlers synergize well with resistance items since they already get HP from their synergy. As usual, you can stack TF with mana and AP items, but make sure you keep another one to replace him later. Leveling up, you can add Sorcerers, Chrono, or even swap TF for a pair of Blasters or Infiltrators, since Kog'Maw and Nocturne are also Battlecast and can provide 2 synergies paired with Zed or Lucian/Graves. This next one is complete at level 5, but it can get you there with little to no HP loss with some good positioning and early scouting. 2 Brawler plus 3 Rebels plus 2 Battlecast. You usually start this one off with 3 Rebels at 2-1, then slowly add units that give you useful synergies as you go along. If you find an early Rumble, you can use him for Demolitionist since he can do a lot of damage and disrupt the enemy in those early fights. Let's look at the comp. Make sure you switch your Infiltrators around to account for maximum backline disruption. Nocturne can really shine in these early levels, completely taking out a carry. So can Zed, who is also a great AD item carrier, holding your Jinx, Vayne, or Jhin items. Ziggs can hold on to mana and AP ones, raining down bombs on your enemies. If you score an early blue buff, Ziggs 2-star can carry you really far with this opener. The constant repositioning and scouting for this one to work perfectly make it a bit more involved than many people like for the early game, but we like to keep you guys on your toes. Always be focused, even in the early game. This opener can transition to almost everything, but it is obviously a great precursor to Jinx, either with Rebels or Brawlers. Still, if you're slowly gathering your comp on the bench, the item flexibility is rather high with this one, so you can get to play Cybernetics, Sorcerers, and more. An interesting variant of the previous opener is one that forgoes the Rebels because you got a 2-star Chrono or any other 2-piece synergy. Let's take a look at it. 2 Brawler plus 2 Infiltrators plus 2 Chrono. In this example, we will use Chrono, but it can be Demolitionist with Ziggs/Rumble, a Sniper with Ashe, or you can opt out of Infiltrators and into 3 Rebels again. The positioning here is key, as the Blitz will pull 1 unit off the opponent's back lines, and then Zed and Nocturne will quickly take care of any remainders, or just backstab the front line if they only have 1 backline unit. Similar to the previous opener, Zed is still a great AD item carrier, but Caitlyn can be that carry as well. Depending on what you got, this comp is not too great at carrying AP items, though Nocturne does his best. A 2-star Nocturne with Ionic Spark will 100-0 most backline carries in the early game. Do not underestimate him. The opener can transition into anything once again, but with a preference to AD-oriented comps. There are no great AP item carriers unless you tweak them in, like a TF instead of the Caitlyn. If I told you there was a champion that might be worth Nicoing at 2-1 in Nicoverse, would you believe me? Because that move is a guaranteed top 4 if played right. That champion is none other than Bard. To play him right, you need to build your starting opener around him. Bard needs 2 things, time and attack speed to make use of that time. So you will need Chrono and some chonky frontliners. Let's take a look at a potential opener with our astronaut friend. The Chrono does not have to be there, especially if you have any kind of attack speed items on Bard. Since they are solid units though, with a synergy that benefits him, it's probably the best idea. You want a position like this in order to protect Bard from infiltrators for as long as possible. A tighter knit group might also help if there are a lot of infiltrators in your lobby, but you will lose harder to other openers, so it's not exactly recommended. Bard can use Thief's Gloves extremely well as early Shojin, rapid fire cannons, or any attack speed item you decide to make, really. Your goal is to level aggressively, and it is quite possible to be level 7 at 3-1 with an early Bard. Forgo all econ beyond 20 gold and just aggressively level. You could get rid of the Bard soon after and start building up econ, probably winning since you have an extra unit or 2 on the board, meaning more synergies to beat your opponents with. The early game is something you need to practice really well in order to climb, since they can be the source of consistent LP gain through repeated top 4 finishes. Preserving HP is extremely important, so make sure you use the openers you learned today. We will talk about mid-game in the next video, so stay tuned. Now go out there and climb that ladder. As always, we love your feedback and continue to bear it in mind while we create our videos, so hit us in the comments with your experience of using econ strategies that you learned today. We'll see you guys in the arena.